Hi everybody, welcome back to Cabin Crafts and Simple Living, and today I thought I would do a fun video on Depression era feed sacks and the things that people made with them. So I went on eBay and I bought this cute little feed sack. This one is, I'm going to put my glasses on. This one is unopened, meaning that it is still a bag. The seams have not been opened up, and as you can see, I'm going to show you that real close. These were made so that you could rip that seam open very easily so that you could reuse this, and it's only got one seam. So there's no seam on the other side. There's no seam on that side. So that when you open this out, you have a nice big piece of material. And this is probably about a 25-pound bag. And like I said, this one is in unopened condition. I bought it on eBay. I would say this is probably maybe the 40s to 50s based on the colors and the pattern. This is a kitchen-y pattern. And so today we're going to talk about what people use these for and how important they were during the Great Depression and the World War II era. And I've even got a stack of quilts here. Aren't those lovely? I have about a dozen quilts. I love quilts. These are all made from feed sack. And so I thought I would share a little bit of history with you about these. So before people had feed sacks, farmers would transport their grain and their goods and their feed in barrels. So seeds and feed and sugar and cotton and all that stuff would go in barrels. And then in the early 1800s, farmers would, their wives would sew rough cotton bags just out of, Osnaburg, or just rough cotton. They weren't colored or anything, just white or brown. And they would put their corn or their feed or their oats or whatever in these big bags, throw them over the back of a horse, go to the mill, and then they would have it ground into their corn flour or their white flour or whatever. And so they were very rough sewn, and they might be stamped with the farmer's name, so that when you went to pick your grain up, it was your bag of corn that went, and then you would get your corn flour back in your bag with your name on it. So in the mid-1800s, with the invention of the sewing machine and also innovation in mills, weaving, and looms, and you start getting cotton material that's produced cheaper, it became more economical to ship flour and sugar and things in cotton bags rather than barrels. So in the middle 1800s, they started putting those goods in bags, in cotton bags. So like I said, the first sacks were white or brown, and they were stamped with the farmer's name or logo or whatever. And then during World War I, the US and Canada started shipping flour to neutral Netherlands to distribute throughout Europe because people were hungry in World War I, and until we entered the war, we were trying to help feed some of Europe with flour. So we were sending flour in cotton bags. So I did not know this, but when I was doing a little bit of research about these, I live in Missouri, for those of you who don't know, and in October of 1924, a gentleman named Asa Bales, he was a mill worker in Missouri, and he filed a patent for a feed sack like this, and the cloth is to be adapted to be used for dress goods. And so after the product is consumed, so he wanted to put pretty fabric. He wanted to use pretty fabric, so he patented that idea, and he gave the patent to the George P. Plant Milling Company in St. Louis, which is only about an hour and a half north of me right now. And so from 1925, they were manufacturing gingham girl sacks, is what they were called. I can just imagine that. And so it's a Missouri thing. I did not know that. So a little bit of Missouri history in these. And so then during World War II, they standardized the sizes of these bags to 100, 50, 25, 10, and 2-pound bags. So you were getting like all the way up to 100-pound bags, 50-pound, 25, 10, and 2-pound bags for flour and sugar and things like that, and feed for animals and stuff. And so the Department of Agriculture encouraged women to use this fabric to make their clothing and things with, because they were saving fabric goods. Like, you couldn't go in the store and buy yards of printed cotton. They were saving it for the war effort. And so the Department of Agriculture encouraged people of all classes to use the feed sacks or the grain sacks. And they standardized those bags in the 100 and 50 and 25 so that women could estimate, because they knew exactly how much yardage was in each bag, so that they could estimate how much fabric that they needed for their clothing, which I thought was really cool. So since fabric was rationed for the war effort, they encouraged the women to use the feed sacks for their clothes. And so they were used up, they were printed up until the early 1960s. So that's why I could kick myself, y'all. I inherited my great-grandmother's trunk, one of her trunks. She had a little, it was actually a cedar chest. And there was a ton of these in there. And some of them had mid-century modern prints on it, and like Western themes with cowboys and Indians and teepees. And I was young and stupid at the time, and I sold all that stuff in a yard sale. Oh my gosh, how stupid am I? And so then I had to go back on eBay and buy this. But anyway, I just thought that you all would love to see this. So, excuse me, I'm still battling the COVID cough. What I wanted to say about this is, there's a saying, we call the people of the Great Depression the greatest generation. There is a saying that hard times make good men. Good men, let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, hard times make good men. Good men, am I saying that right? I had this all in my head before I did this. Hard times make good men. Good men make good times. Good times make weak men. I think now we're in the weak men section of the world. And the greatest generation really was good people. I mean, they had it really hard. Everything was rationed. Food was rationed. Clothing was rationed. I mean, over in the UK, even Queen Elizabeth had to save ration stamps for her wedding dress, and you think about that. We don't have to sacrifice anything. And so I had the privilege of having my great-grandparents around till I was 21 years old. They both passed away when I was 21. My great-grandfather died in September, and my great-grandmother died a couple months later in December. And so I had them for a long time, and they would tell me these stories. And I remember seeing their ration books in that chest, and I asked them what this was, and they was like, well, we could only have so much sugar, we could only have so much meat, we could only have so, you were limited as to what you could buy in the store. We cannot comprehend that. We're used to going, we saw a little bit of it at COVID, and we would get mad. We'd go to the grocery store and something would be sold out, like toilet paper or whatever, and we'd get really angry. Well, people back then, they didn't get angry because they knew that it was being conserved for the war effort. During COVID, people were being greedy and, buying it all up and whatever. And also some of it couldn't be manufactured because they had closed some of the plants down. But I look at this little pattern, and this reminds me of my grandmother. She had patterns like this. This was her kitchen balances. So a bag this size, she would open this all up, or it might be a little small table square. Once you open this up, I mean, this is a pretty good sized little bag. So if you double this would make a little cute little, just hem the edges and it's a table square. The other cute little products are little patterns that's on these, like little ginghams and things. My mom, all of her dresses were made out of feed sack and flour sack and whatever. And so this bottom quilt here, she said she slept under this every night. This one here. And you can see that it's just everything. It's just all different. And she goes, I remember that dress. And I remember that dress. I mean, and there's a gingham, and then here's some kind of purple and yellow and white striped ginghamy looking, and then here's this pretty blue. She said I would lay there at night under that quilt, and it reminded her of her dresses, because when her dresses wore out, when she was done playing with, when she was done wearing her dresses and she wore them out, her great grandmother would take the scraps and make them into this quilt. And so her great grandmother, my great great grandmother, made this into a quilt. So this is in my house now. She said she slept under this every night. I lost my mom in March. This is a lovely thought, that my mom slept under this every night as a kid. It's still in pretty good shape. It's got a couple rough patches around the edges, but that's normal. Here's another one. Like I said, I've got about a dozen quilts. And you can see people they weren't trying to really be matchy-matchy. They just used whatever colors they had. This probably was a man's shirt. There's some kind of little gingham here, and some kind of, those are little clover. Isn't that cute? And this is just a really fine little dotty pattern. It's faded now, but it was red and white at one time. And then, of course, I love red. This is just a simple little 9-patch. This is one of the first quilts that a little girl would learn to sew, is a 9-patch. And then it's got solid blocks. Like I said, they're not trying to be matchy-matchy. They're just using whatever fabric scraps they have. You can see there's faded spots on there. But to me, it just shows the love of these wonderful quilts. Like I said, I've got about a dozen. But I got this little bag on eBay for $8, and then I think I had to pay like $4 shipping. Some of them are very, very expensive. Some of them still have, I'm going to fold this in half. Some of them will still have the label. So they would all come with a label on them that said the milling company and how many pounds it was and whether it was flour or sugar or whatever. Those are more expensive when they've actually still got the label on them and they're completely intact, and it's like somebody just dumped the flour out yesterday and it's still in really perfect shape. This one's actually in perfect shape. It just doesn't have the label on it, and it's a little bit later period, but I still love it. And I love the colors because like I said, it reminds me of my grandma's kitchen valances. Having said that, this new look that everybody calls farmhouse is not farmhouse. This is farmhouse. This farmhouse was very colorful. This gray and cream and white, you young girls out there that are calling farmhouse, I know Joanna Gaines has made that very popular with the silos, and her way of decorating everything is white and cream and galvanized tint. That is not farmhouse. That is her style of farmhouse. But this is farmhouse. Farmhouse was very colorful. My grandma's kitchen was a riot of color. Nothing matched. Because like I said, it was the Depression. They had the kitchen tools that had the wooden handles that were red or green. They had Fiesta ware in their cabinets. It was all different colors. Having said that, there is Depression glass also came in feed sacks like this. And what it was, that beautiful pressed glass that you see that's green and pink and yellow, it was called Depression glass because it would come, one piece of glass would come like a candy dish or maybe a little bowl of some sort would come in a bag of this as a way to cheer ladies up during the Depression, a beautiful colored piece of pressed glass, because it was so cheap to produce at that time, that they would put it in with the flour or the sugar or the oats or whatever that you were getting as a way to cheer people up. That's why it's called Depression glass. It came in this because it wouldn't break. It was in a 25, 50-pound bag of flour. And so it was like Christmas every time you went and got a bag of flour to get a surprise dish in your bag of flour. How exciting would that be? Also, the Quaker Oats Company. I have a whole set, and I was going to go get one, and I forgot to do it. But I have a whole set of Homer Laughlin dishes of my great-great-grandmother's that she got one piece at a time out of Quaker Oats. How cool is that? So every time you got Quaker Oats, this big cylinder of Quaker Oats, as a promotion in the early 20s, they wanted people to eat oatmeal for breakfast, and people associated it with horse feed, and they didn't want to buy it. So they put a dish in the big cylinder of Quaker Oats to get people to buy it. And so I've got a whole set of Homer Laughlin dishes that came in Quaker Oats that was my great-great-grandmother's. So that's where Depression glass came from. It was in bags like these, and then dishes was in Quaker Oats cylinders to get people to eat Quaker Oats for breakfast. Isn't that funny? I wish we still did this. I call my grandmother's generation and my great-grandmother's generation the ultimate recycling generation. They didn't waste anything. And I wish they would still put stuff. I know it's cheaper to put flour and sugar in paper, and that's when they started doing that in the 60s as they went from cotton to paper. But how cool would it be to go to the store and get a bag of flour in a pretty cotton bag? I would just love that again. Now you go to the store and your cotton's made in China. America's one of the biggest cotton producing countries in the world. I have no understanding as to why we do this. But anyway, I thought you all would enjoy seeing this little history about feed sacks. I was excited when I found out that it's a Missouri connection. I did not know that. And get on eBay and look for some and make something cute with it. And make a little baby quilt with it. There's some really cute cottons out there. And they actually make reproduction feed sack materials at the quilt shops. So you can go to the quilt store and get reproduction feed sack fabric if you don't want to go through the process of buying the real antique thing and cutting it up, which would kind of be heartbreaking. So hope you all enjoyed this video. God bless. Keep praying for me. I'm still dealing with the COVID. So I'm on lots of cough medicine so I don't cough in my video, but appreciate y'all watching. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, I'm still trying to build this back up again. So hope you all enjoyed feed sacks from the Depression era. Thank you. Bye.